There's a peculiar jaunty charm as this goes around the layout that really does make it look like something special. Hi there everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jennifer Kirk, welcoming you here up to the loft on Weir Yard. Now today we've got a really special exclusive. This is the Fell locomotive from KR Models. Now they've already released the GT3 and won awards for that model, and they've proved the naysayers completely wrong as they're well through selling out their second full production run of that GT3 model. But the Fell is going to be their second locomotive release. And for a very long time, the Fell was almost a joke of the model railway world. People used to say, oh, who's going to bring out the Fell this year? And it would be an April the 1st staple. Well, now all those manufacturers are going to have to pick a new April the 1st gag of what they're going to release, because KR Models took the bull by the horns and tooled up for that Fell model, and they've incredibly kindly allowed us to put the pre-production model through its paces. Now we also have a spare body in the BR green livery as well, just to illustrate this, and I will show this in today's video. Now just please do remember that this is a pre-production model, so it's hand assembled out of early test shots from the molds, so it isn't necessarily exactly as you would expect your model to be arriving with you, and I am told that they are due towards the end of Easter this year at the time of filming. So if you really want to take a sneak peek and see what to look forward to, then we've got it covered today. We've also got an affiliate link down below that takes you to Rails of Sheffield if you want to pick up one of these models, and of course you can also get them from the KR Models website direct. And they are offering a sound package, and the pre-production model actually is fitted with the ESU lock sound decoder with that Fell sound package installed, and this is going to be an exclusive first listen to that too. But that's enough of me babbling on here in this intro. Let's go to what you've come here to see. Let's take an exclusive first look at the KR Models Fell, in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. And also don't forget the Billy's Replacement Speakers merchandising store that you'll find down below the video, with all the t-shirts, hoodies and mugs that you've come to love from this channel. But without further ado, let's take a close look. Now the Fell locomotive is really quite a unique and interesting prototype. It came about during those experimental periods where BR was looking for replacing the ageing steam fleet and modernising, and there were electric locomotives, and there were diesel locomotives, and a good number of different prototypes appeared. A lot of these were demonstrators built by private contractors, and that's where the Fell came in. This used an innovative transmission, which was really the heart of the Fell locomotive, to allow multiple Paxman diesel engines to be able to provide varying degrees of power and apply them to the track through a mechanical transmission with initially this 8-coupled wheelbase. And these showed the somewhat steam-orientated thinking at the time, with these connecting rods on the side, and it must have looked quite a sight with these flailing at high speed on the main line. But as all prototypes generally are, there were a few little wrinkles to be ironed out, not least the fact that the transmission was a little bit finicky, and indeed an accident saw it badly damaged. It was rebuilt, and when rebuilt the locomotive reappeared in this really attractive BR later green livery, but that was very short-lived. In fact, the locomotive cremated itself, and that proved to be the very end of the Fell project. Now, it had taken on board the idea of using smaller, proven diesel engines with its 6 Paxman diesels to overcome the potential problems with larger, higher powered diesels, although even as it was being built, those engines were getting bigger, getting more powerful, more reliable, and it was pretty much obsolete the moment it took to the rails. Its problems really were quite extensive, not least that complicated transmission, which was very innovative, but in a way felt a little bit like a solution that was looking for a problem. There was also ventilation issues, and that was the root of why the locomotive ultimately cremated itself. With a lack of ventilation and having all these small engines one after the other in the bonnets, it meant that there was always going to be problems with overheating, and that really was the ultimate demise of the model. In railway modelling circles, the FEL has become a little bit of a joke locomotive, and for a long time it was a case of who's going to announce the FEL this year, said rather tongue-in-cheek and with an expectation that maybe every April the 1st there was going to be a manufacturer make a joke announcement before lunchtime, only to retract that and go, psych. Well, at Worley, just before lockdown hit us, KR Models actually made that announcement at the show and kind of took everybody by surprise. They'd already produced the GT3 model, and that's gone on to win awards, and that set the benchmark for these quirky models of prototypes and generally things that you wouldn't normally expect to see in model form. The FEL, therefore, was very much in the sights of KR Models, and they very, very kindly loaned the pre-production model. Now, I have to stress, as a pre-production model, don't expect this to be identical in every way to how you would expect to find the production models, and indeed this has been subject to some serious and prolonged heavy handling. It's been poked, it's been prodded, and as you can see by the wheels as well, it has been extensively run to ensure that the mechanism in this doesn't go the same way of the prototype FEL, and certainly it stood up to that really, really well. There are also a few little areas you'll see there on the buffers where it has suffered somewhat, and so again, don't try and claim that this is what the production models are going to be like, because they will be perfect in terms of the build quality. But this is currently what is to hand, and if you've been to any of the shows where KR Models have been with their stand, these are the same models that you will have seen in the cabinet on that stand, so I'm really indebted to be able to borrow these. Now, this second body shell is representative of the prototype after it had its transmission rebuild, and it re-emerged in this British Rail green with the orange stripes, plus the later ferret and dartboard crests. Now, it didn't really last long in this particular livery, but it is offered by KR Models as an alternative to the plain rail black, and actually I do quite like this. Again, this has been very well handled, so the broken handrail, don't read into that, that's just simply through the fact that this has been through the mill. You can also see on this what the buffers look like, and they do really look quite nice. The model itself is offered with the 8-coupled chassis here, but the connecting rods are able to have the centre section removed, and this allows the locomotive to be converted between its 8-coupled and its 4 and 4-coupled varieties. The reason that the prototype had this was just really to make it easier to go around corners, and they found that with removing this centre section just made that a lot easier. You'll also see that with all of that heavy handling, there's a bit of a bend on these connecting rods. Again, that's because this is an EP that has been to Canada and back several times, and also been poked and prodded by a number of technicians to ensure that it has the longevity. So it always tends to pick up just a little bit of damage when you subject it to that kind of abuse. Looking very closely at the sides, you can see we've got that nice and subtle rivet detail, and there is a lot of detail on what could otherwise be quite a slab-sided body. The unicycling lion is again really, really well produced. That's crisp and sharp, and looking further afield, these grills do look pretty good. Each side of the locomotive is unique, and I know that this is an area that people were bringing up on online fora. So I'm just showing you this side. You can see the positioning of all the grills, and if I turn it over, you can see the different positioning of the grills and the window inside from the engine room. Looking down on the roof as well, we've got the indents there at one end, plus this looks like an exhaust of some kind just at the side, plus the representation of all of these roof panels. It's really difficult to actually show this. It's quite a shiny finish on this model, so it is reflecting the lights quite heavily. But what I'm going to try and do is, perhaps the green one will allow me to show you this a lot easier. You can also see there that the front grills where the radiators are completely see-through, and I do particularly like that effect. That is really quite nice. Looking to the black one, you can actually also see the fan and the radiator inside, which I presume is part of the chassis, and that really does look good. Looking to the underside, we've got these centrally sprung bogies front and back, and again, it does mean that this will track through point work really prototypically, and you won't get that issue with rear mounted bogies where they swing right out. Now, all of KR Models' locomotives are tested to be able to go down to actually 2 first radius curves, although I would say that the prototype never ever traversed curves that tight. Couplings are in NEM pockets mounted on the front and rear bogies, and then in terms of pickups, we've got phosphor bronze wipers there, I can see, just playing against the rear of all 8 of the driving wheels. It's an outside frame mechanism, not unlike a Class 8 shunter, and we've got these red picked out counterweights on the outside, which really does make it quite interesting when the locomotive is running. We've also got the spring relief there on the outside frames, and the wheels too are accurately spoked as per the original. Brake rigging on this model is all in place, but I'm not fully aware whether that is how it will come from the factory. I suspect it may do, or whether they may come for the user to fit as a separate detail. We've also got sanding pipes, and they are up against the wheels, and the brake rigging too, they all line up nicely with the wheel treads. There is a degree of extra space in there that I can see, and hopefully that means that if you're looking to change this to EM or P4, it should be fairly simple to pull these wheels out along the axle to the correct gauge. Having opened the locomotive up, it's quite easy. There's some screws just underneath. A crosshead jeweler's screwdriver opens those up, and then inside we've got actually a really good heavy chassis. The motor's contained under here, with a gear tower going down and transmitting power to the 8 coupled wheel sets. We've got cab interiors, although on this pre-production there's no picking out of the gauges, although in all honesty with you, I don't think that that's going to be easy enough to see through the window, so not really a big problem. We've got a speaker here fitted just in the front under one of the bonnets of the locomotive, and that plays down through the hole where the bogie goes, with a little bit of a resonance chamber within the chassis for transmitting the sound out. All of the connections on the board are just plugged in at either end, and we appear to have front and back lighting, and also independent cab lights front and rear. This is the ESU lock sound decoder fitted in place, and that gives us the sound file, which has been made up by layering the sound of the Paxman power plant to try and recreate the accurate sound of the FEL. It also allows the different engines to start and stop whilst others are still running, and given that there's no possibility of recording the real FEL because it's long since been scrapped, this is a really good, credible way of recreating the sound file. As I said before, there is really a decent weight to this locomotive, and I'm going to reassemble this actually with the green body just to be able to show that running. Spare bodies are not available. This has been queried with KR models, and just due to the expense of being able to make extra bodies without any guarantee that they will be able to be sold is just not practical, and it's not something that you would expect from any other manufacturer either. So if you want the green one and the black one, then you will have to buy two separate models. The pre-production model did run really well on Weir Yard. I had it running with a pretty reasonable length train, and it didn't struggle whatsoever. It also managed to get across crossings and also double slips too, which can often pose quite a challenge to a locomotive. It got round the corners without any great issue, and there's something magical about the way that the motion on this model moves as it runs along. It's certainly one of the more eye-catching of diesel locomotives that I've seen in model form, very reminiscent of some of the small shunters like the class 3, 4, 5, 7s and 8s that have already been made available. But this is a locomotive that just looks graceful on the main line with a long train. I tried swapping over the bodies and got the green body onto the chassis. Now, I'm not 100% sure whether the chassis colouring on this is accurate to go with the green body, but for me, this is my preferred livery. I know quite a lot of people do prefer the black, but for me, there's something about this Brunswick green with the lining and that later BR logo. The cab lighting worked really well, and the sound package did seem to be pretty interesting. You can hear those separate Paxman engines starting up, but I struggled a bit without the instructions to be able to work out all of the sounds, and there seems to be a braking function on this ESU decoder, which I couldn't quite get my head around, but that's entirely down to not having instructions for this particular decoder rather than anything else. The front and rear lighting as well also works, but it's quite subtle, and you do have to just look for that. I'm not 100% sure on the rear markers. Again, this is down to me not having any instructions for the particular brand of decoder that's in this model. Overall, it was a good performer, and this is rather an ugly duckling from the prototype era, and I'm really grateful to KR Models for loaning me these pre-production samples and being able to put them through their paces. I know that this is the first time that people will probably have seen these models run, and also one of the first instances that it's been possible to record and show off the sound program that's on the sound-fitted versions. All in all, for something which does look to my eyes like a cut and shut of a Class 37 that's then gone on to have two double nose jobs, it's actually got a peculiar qualm. I've heard people describe the prototype as a somewhat ugly model, but I don't see that in model form. There's a peculiar jaunty charm as this goes around the layout with the rods flailing that really does make it look like something special, and I'm sure that you'll agree that it does look on track to follow on gracefully from the GT3 as being a model that people talk about for all the right reasons. Well, I hope you really enjoyed that video. Don't forget to leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you and know what your thoughts are. And it's also a great way of just getting a really nice, varied and honest opinion on what people are thinking about this all new model. Is this something that is going to follow on from the GT3 and score KR models more awards? Or is there anything that maybe you've picked up on in this video that you want to point out that maybe I've missed? Also, don't forget to tickle that like button and share this video too. That's really important. Let people know what this pre-production model of the Fel from KR Models actually really looks like and sounds like. And if you haven't already done so, then do please consider subscribing to the channel. We've also got YouTube membership open for business, and of course that Billy's replacement speakers merchandise plus all of the JK channel merch down below too. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take amazing care of yourself, and I look forward to seeing you here again in the next video. Till then, happy modelling. Bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Offshore Allen, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky107107, George Botterini, Chris Moss, Robert Steers, MD of San Juan Model Company and Grantline Products, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, John N from NC, NYMRish, Jonathan Foster, Peter, Clifford Ison, Larry W. Grant, NI Railways 4000 class, Ian Coulson, Alan Dickerson, Eddie Popper, and Karen Nickel. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.